What's up, Slick Review fans? We're coming at you with another video. Today we're going to take a look at another dash cam. These are very important to have in your car, if for nothing else other than in case you get into an accident. I don't know if you know this or not, but insurance companies need to investigate to find out whose fault it was, and this may come as a shock to some of you, but people don't always tell the truth. So if you get hit, somebody runs a red light or something like that, and you can't prove it, because they will tell their insurance company that they had a green light and you ran a red, they will tell them that. So unless you can prove it, you may be stuck holding the bill on your own. So it's very important to get a dash cam. So this one is called the Z Edge S3 Dual Dash Cam. The link will be down in the description for you. So this one is nice. This is the first one we've tried that has a dual camera setup. So you can have one facing out the front, and then this other one can face towards the rear. This one has a price tag of $160. It is available through Amazon Prime. Again, the link will be down in the description. So some of the notable features before we get into the box is that the front camera, if you only have the front running, that can run at 1440p, 30 frames a second, so higher than standard 1080. If you have both cameras running, they both run at 1080p, 30 frames a second. So you get a little bit of bump if you just run the front. If you have both, you're getting full 1080p. Both cameras have a 150-degree wide-angle lens. The camera does feature loop recording, which basically means it automatically overwrites the oldest video file with the newest. So you can put an SD card in there and just forget about it. If you need to pop it out to get some video off of there, you can do that. Otherwise, the camera is just going to find the oldest file and just write over it. It supports up to 128 gigabyte micro SD card, which most of the ones I've seen only support up to 32 gigs. So that's definitely a plus right off the bat. And they give you a 16 gig card right in the box. So you're ready to go. So that's really everything we need to cover before we get into the box. So let's take a quick tour around here. Coming around the side here, we have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you're not satisfied with it, if you don't think it works for you, if it's not what you need, you can get your money back. So that's nice to see. Here we've got some of those features that we just talked about. So wide-angle lens, loop recording, motion detection, parking mode, and simultaneous recording in full HD. And then come around the side, some more of those features, again, what we've already talked about. So let's just get into the box and check this thing out. Alright, so right away we get the front camera, so basically the main display. So we'll set that right there. What else do we have in here? Alright, inside we've got a bunch of stuff going on. Set that there. We have your standard car power adapter. Bunch of cables. Let's pull all this out here and see what we got to play with. So again, because you can mount the second one wherever that's hiding in this box. There it is. You can mount that one really anywhere you like. Most people are probably going to put that in the back window just because it kind of makes sense. But we'll talk about that in a second. So the reason I tell you that is that's why they have all these cables here. I'm going to guess this larger one would be used for the secondary camera. So again, you can mount this wherever you like. You are going to have to hardwire it, and we'll see how all that works. But that's why they give you this really long cable here. So we'll set that there, and then we have a smaller micro USB cable, most likely used for plugging the unit into a computer should you need to, and then here's another longer micro USB as well. Let's see what else we have in here. So a bunch of mounting hardware. This looks to be used for routing the cables, so that's nice that they give you that. Couple mounting brackets for the camera. As promised, 16 gig micro SD card. Some various propaganda there as well. And that's everything in the box. So we'll take a look at some of this stuff here. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get some power to this main camera so we can take a look at it. Alright guys, so I've got it plugged into the wall here just so we can take a quick tour here at the desk, just because it's a little bit easier to look through the menu rather than being in the car. So we'll get it all hooked up in the car so we can see how it works as well. But upon first boot up here, I popped in the micro SD card, so formatting will erase all data. So just so you know, if you put in an SD card you already have, make sure there's nothing on there because you do have to format it right away. But they give you one in the box, so just use that one. So we'll say OK. So it's all formatted, ready to go. Started recording immediately, and that's what I wanted to see. The whole point of these dash cameras, I run one myself, and you want to be able to just set them up and forget it. Because a nice thing is, once you have this connected to power, so you just have it set into a power outlet in your car, you want to just set it and forget it. And most of these cameras, and we'll see if this one does as well, most of them will power on and off with the car. So as soon as it detects power, like it just did when we fired it up here, it'll start recording immediately. So you get in the car, turn it on, and go. And then once you shut the car off, it'll run basically on battery for about 30 seconds or so and then shut itself off. A common complaint you'll see in reviews from people who don't know any better about these dash cameras is they say they have poor battery life. They're not designed to run on battery. They're designed to be plugged in all the time. So keep that in mind. You'll see a lot of people say, oh, it's got shitty battery life. That's because, again, they're dumb. Okay, so let's get going here. Looking at the screen, so we have a counter up top. Right now we're running 1440p, 30 frames a second, because again we don't have the second lens set up. We have loop recording here. The 3 stands for 3 minutes. So every 3 minutes this is going to save the file and start a new one. And why that's good is because things do happen. Files can get corrupted, things like that. So you want to break them up into smaller ones so that if you have a problem with one file, if it doesn't import right or something like that, you're not losing everything. So that's what that is. It's breaking it up into 3 minutes, and you can change that as well. We do have time and date stamp as well here. So let's go into the menu here and see what we can change. So here we can go in and we can change the resolution. Now why you might want to do this is because there are pros and cons to each one. So the top one here, again, while we're running one camera, we can have 1440p 30 frames a second. That's nice because it's higher resolution. It's higher than HD if you are involved in a hit and run or anything like that, or even if you just like taking nice video for whatever reason, you do racing or whatever. Higher resolution, it is better. So you can use that if you like. Down we can do 1296p at 30 frames a second, which I've never heard of, but maybe some people use that. Here's my personal favorite, and I'm glad to see this, 1080p at 60 frames a second. Now why I like 60 frames a second, it's much smoother. The video file looks better. You'll see in a lot of YouTube videos, mine included, that it's running at 1080p 60 frames a second, so everything is much smoother. And I actually usually prefer that as opposed to like a higher resolution. We'll test all that out. We'll give you examples of all of these. And like I said, usually that's the one I end up going with. Now we do have 1080 at 30 frames a second, which is what you're going to have to use when you're using both cameras. Going down from there, we've got 720 at 120 frames a second, 60, and 30. So those will be good as well. As 720p at 60 frames a second is going to look just about as good as 1080, and the file size is going to be smaller as well. So that's something else to keep in mind, is that if you have a micro SD card, depending on how much data and how many trips you want to save on there, you may want a lower or higher resolution. It all depends on what you want. So we'll go back. So here in the screen display, we do have choices for what you want displayed in the main module here. So either the front camera, the rear camera, or picture-in-picture. Now there's nothing in the manual as far as what that might mean. I can only assume that maybe you can have both. Maybe the front camera and then maybe the rear camera, or either or, you know, something like that. We'll test that out when we get this all hooked up in the car. So let's go back here. What else do we have here? So that loop recording that I was telling you about. What intervals you would like the files broken up into. So 1 minute, 3 minutes, or 5. Go ahead and choose whatever you like. Let's go down here. You can turn the microphone on or off if you would like, depending on what you want to do. You can change the exposure. So if you're reviewing your videos, you find that it's just generally too dark or too light, you can go in here and account for that. We do have a date stamp, language, date and time. You can turn the ketone on or off. We're going to turn that off right now. Startup chime, I like to leave that stuff on just so I can hear that it turned on, but whatever you want to do. Device auto off. So we're going to go in here and take a look at this. So what this does is that you can set the device to automatically shut down when sitting idle, even if the power is on. So whatever situation you can think of that you're sitting in the car and maybe it's running or you're just hanging out, but you're not moving, so why have the camera going? Because this thing does have motion sensing capability. So if you're just sitting there, but the car's on, and you don't need the video running, you can set it to turn the camera off, either at a minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or you can forgo that feature if you like. So I think I'll leave that off for now, but it's nice to know that it does have that. Now the LCD auto off. Now this might be kind of nice because sometimes at night having this, it's not a bright screen, but having the screen on and facing you, some people might be bothered by that. So you can set it for the screen itself to turn off. So you start driving, and a minute or 3 minutes later, the screen will turn off, but the camera's still running. I like to have the screen on just so I know that it's working, so we're going to set that to off. Now WDR, that is basically for low light compensation, so if you have that on, the camera will try to balance the exposure and try to make it look better. So I would recommend leaving that on. You probably want to leave this at 60 Hz, you don't really want to mess with that. You can format the memory card if you like, and that's really about it. So actually a lot of options in there, you can change a lot. We also have low light warning, so it can tell you if it detects that there's low light. I am going to anticipate that that's going to be annoying, so I'm going to turn that off. We have motion detection, and what that does is when this is enabled, video recording is automatically paused when there's no movement detected by the front view camera or the G sensor inside. Video recording will automatically start again when movement is detected. So basically, the video starts and stops when you're moving. That might be handy, like if you're sitting in traffic or something like that, but then again, people change lanes and they do all sorts of stupid shit in traffic jams. So I would hate to be in a situation where you needed your dash cam, but you weren't moving, the other guy was, so the camera wasn't running. So I would recommend leaving that off. That's how I'm going to set that. Parking mode, what that does, and we're going to turn that on, is that while your car is parked, if the G sensor, because it's still running in low power mode, so if it senses that your car shakes a little bit, like someone's backing out and hits your car, it's going to turn on just for a little bit and record out the front and back, and maybe you get a plate or something like that and see what happened to your car. So I would leave that on as well. And you can set the sensitivity for that feature here. So we're going to see, we'll put that on normal. And that looks like all the features, guys. So there's a lot of user changeable features within this camera. I'm really excited to see how it runs when we get it all hooked up. So taking a look just at this, if you'd like to see that, here's the main unit. This is kind of a soft touch, rubberized kind of deal here. We do have the camera lens here, and you can control the angle just by manually moving it here. And this is where it mounts. Up top we have the micro SD card, a hard reset button, AV in, charging and power on that side, and then all your user buttons right here, and speaker here as well for playback. So here's what we're going to do, guys. I'm going to get this all set up in the car, and we'll take some sample videos, and then we'll come back for the verdict after that. See you then. Alright guys, so here we go. We're going to run through the different resolution types, and the big point of this is, one, so you can see how good the camera records, and two, so you can see the different resolution and what you give up and what you get and everything like that. So we're going to run through these quick. I'm going to give you like 15 seconds apiece. So first off, what we're running is we're going to start from the highest and work our way down. This is the 1440p setting at 30 frames a second. And again, we can only have this resolution setting with the front-facing camera only. I apologize for the audio, guys. I'm using the built-in microphone, and I guess that solves two purposes. You can hear the internal microphone and how it picks up conversation. I am projecting a little bit just because I want to make sure that the microphone picks everything up. So continuing on, guys, this is the 1296p at 30 frames a second. Now, I've never heard of that resolution size. Maybe it's been around, maybe it's something obscure. Again, I've never heard of it, but I can only infer that it's less than 1440, but slightly better than 1080p. So here we go, guys. Here's the option I've been talking up this whole time. It's 1080p at 60 frames a second. The only other option we have that's 60 frames a second is the 720p, which is still HD, just not 1080. And why I like it. So we've seen a couple so far, and those were at 30 frames a second. So as you can see, 60 is much smoother. There's more frames every single second, so you get more detail. It's just a much more natural looking video file. So again, here live, I don't know how the camera's performing. That's what the editing and everything, the verdict, that's what that will be for. But hopefully it's working just fine here. at 60 frames a second. Alright, so moving on down the list, I just plugged in the second camera. As you can see, we have picture-in-picture. So what I'm seeing on the display on the main unit there is the larger image is the front-facing camera, and then up in the left-hand corner we have a smaller thumbnail of what the rear camera is seeing. And that was that setting that we saw earlier. When these are both plugged in, you can configure that however you like. I think I like the picture-in-picture because, again, I like to see that the cameras are running. But again, you can change that for however you like. I think I like the picture-in-picture because, again, I like to see that the cameras are running. But again, you can change that for however you like. Now, from here on, again, we're going down in the resolution sizes, but right now these are both running at 1080p 30 frames a second, which might be good, because if you want both cameras, again, you can't have my favorite 60 frames a second, you can't have that, but you can have full 1080, which is just fine. And if you're using this for Uber or Lyft or something like that, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well in the verdict, if you want to fast forward or whatever. But if you're using this for Lyft or Uber or something like that, if you're a driver and you want the inward-facing camera as well, which I highly recommend, you will need to use the 1080p setting as well. So here we go. Here's 1080p 30 frames a second. So here we go, guys, 720p at 60 frames a second. This is going to be that smoother frame rate that I was telling you about earlier with 1080. It's just that this is slightly lower resolution. So you're going to have pretty good visual quality, not as good as 1080, but you're also going to have smaller video files. So you get a nice passable video and image. And this is our last one, guys. This is 720p, 30 frames a second, lowest resolution, lowest frame rate. You're going to get more memory card for your money here. You're going to be able to put more files on there. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. You're going to lose detail and everything, and you don't really need to worry about that because the memory card writes itself over when it needs to anyway. And if you're really worried about that, just get a larger one. So I wouldn't recommend using this for a whole lot of reasons, but if you want to, again, for whatever reason, you can. So here's 720p, 30 frames a second. So as we just saw, guys, this camera performs absolutely amazing. You have a wide range of features, resolution settings, pretty much everything you could ever want, and again, it's a dual camera setup. So what's the final verdict? Well, let's talk for just a second here. If you guys don't care to hear all this, I'm going to talk about Lyft and Uber drivers and accidents, things like that. Basically, to cut to the chase, this thing is a win. It's only $160 for a dual camera setup. That's a good deal. So definitely go ahead and pick this thing up. Again, you can get it on Amazon. The link is down in the description, guys. Now, if you want to stick around for just a minute, I'm only going to talk real quick about Lyft and Uber and, again, accidents, things like that. Okay, first, if you're a Lyft or Uber driver, listen up. Okay, if you do that job full-time, part-time, whatever, doesn't matter. I do Lyft and Uber part-time just to make a little side money, and it's kind of a hobby. It's kind of cool. If you do Lyft or Uber, this may come as a surprise to you, but sometimes the people you pick up are not the most upstanding folks. They will lie. They will say you were drunk, you were texting, anything to get a free ride. People don't give a shit if they fuck you over. They really don't care. They will say you were drunk, high, anything like that. It hasn't happened to me, but I'm in some of the Lyft and Uber driver Facebook groups, and people say it's happened to them. Also, all you got to do is you're already on YouTube, go to like Uber Ride Gone Bad, and you'll find passengers attacking drivers, all sorts of things like that. So guys, you do want an objective witness to what happened. One for car accidents, because Lyft and Uber have crazy high deductibles, and like we talked about in the beginning, if you're in an accident where you can't prove what happened, it's going to be your word versus the other guy, and you're going to be fucked. So, get a dash cam, get this one, get one with a dual camera setup, just like what we have here. So that one, you can have the camera out the front for accidents, things like that, and then the camera in the rear to record the passengers. So as we saw here in this review, I had the camera set up for such a scenario. Now you can mount this secondary camera wherever you want. You can put it out the back window in case you're rear-ended, anything you want to do. I had it set up for a Lyft and Uber situation. Basically, the secondary camera in my car is now mounted right next to this one, just facing the other way. So again, I think that's a really good setup. That's why this camera is really good for like Lyft and Uber drivers. This is what you want to get. Now, if you do use this for Lyft or Uber, I'm not going to give you any sort of legal advice or anything like that as far as recording people. What I will say is if you want to, contact an attorney, seek actual legal advice. But with wiretapping laws and everything, even if your state is a one-party consent state, just don't even mess with all that. Here's what I do. So right now I have a sign when I'm working, I put it up in the back seat, that tells people they are being audio and video recorded. Because again, I always run a dash cam and the microphone's always on. So people are audio recorded. Now I have camera as well, which I've always wanted. It's just better to tell people that they're being recorded. Never mind legality, because again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not going to give you legal advice, so that's not what this is. This is basically being a person advice. So it's just better to tell people that they're being recorded. And it's not something you need to say, just put it on a sign or something like that. I have people all the time ask me, and they're curious, and it's fine. I've never had any issues. Also, people tend to be on their better behavior if they know they're being recorded. So for a lot of reasons, guys, if you put up a sign or just tell them or whatever, just let them know that they're being recorded somehow. Now again, talking about car accidents, I've kind of touched on it a couple times already, guys, but I really want to just drive it home that if you're in a car accident, you need objective evidence as to what happened, because the other guy is not going to admit to texting, running a red light, anything like that. I know that may be a surprise to you, but they're not going to do it. So you need a dash cam. Now, if you don't need all of these features, if you don't think you need a dual setup, and not everyone does, go through the channel. We reviewed a couple of these. You can find them for much cheaper. You can find them for 40, 50 bucks. However, this one has the most features that I've seen to date, and I genuinely think this one is the best value for money that we've checked out so far. So again, guys, to reiterate, this is a great option at only 160 bucks for a dual setup. That's a very good price, and this has a ton of features with all the resolution settings and everything else there. And again, they give you a micro SD card as well in the box. So if you guys have any comments or questions, please do leave them down below. I try to answer every single one. And most importantly, guys, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss any future videos. That's all I've got for you this time, guys. Slick Reviews